everyone, my name is Carmen from New Leaf Designs, and this video is a kind of compilation video of all kinds of tips and tricks for these fun colorwork socks. I am working on this sample now with the zigzag motif and Scapious Arcadia Sahara and Valley, and both are really nice variegated colorways. If you haven't done a colorwork sock yet, I highly recommend starting out with this motif. You don't have to use exactly these colors because this pattern, this motif will work very well with the other Scapious Arcadia color combinations that are in the booklet. Especially this zigzag pattern is really easy for beginners. If you're wondering, should I do toe up, should I do cuff down? If you haven't knit a colorwork sock yet before, I recommend cuff down, even though my favorite is toe up. But with cuff down, you have, it's a little bit easier to get a good fitting sock around the leg, because the biggest challenge with colorwork socks is that they are too tight sometimes around the leg, around the ankle. You can't get them over the heel. That's really the biggest challenge with colorwork socks. And if you're working these socks cuff down, the wedge that we're knitting, hang on, there, I just had to get these socks for you that I just finished. This is a sock that I knit cuff down, and you can see that because of the heel. It might look a little strange right now, but this actually looks really good when it's on a foot. And I especially like the colorwork section being down all the way to the heel, and this single color part is actually on the bottom of the foot where you don't see it. So that's why I really like the cuff down version, but that's not the main part. The main part why I like cuff down is that the wedge you knit, the gusset in preparation of the heel, that gives you some more wearing comfort. It's more helpful to have this wedge on the leg part because that means you get more ease, more stretch around that part of the foot. This one I've knit toe up, and you can see that the gusset, the little triangular wedge, is on the foot part. You still need to have this wedge because it helps preventing the colorwork from distorting around the heel. But after the heel, it can feel a little tight. So if you've knit toe up colorwork socks and you've struggled with getting your sock to fit around the leg, then I really recommend, trying cuff down. This is another cuff down one. So if you're just starting out, this is your first, not your first sock, I recommend trying a plain sock first, maybe the classic New Leaf socks that we did for the summer sock along Mal. But if you're first starting with a colorwork sock, I really recommend cuff down first, because you'll have a bigger chance of it actually fitting you the way you want it to fit. And you have such gorgeous patterns to choose from. And if this is your first colorwork ever, then I also recommend this motif. And why? Because it is a very easy to memorize motif. Most of the rows, it's 2 stitches of the one color, 2 stitches of the other color. And then in one row, or maybe 2, you have 3 stitches of the one color and just 1 stitch of the other. So you have a couple of rows of 2 and 2 to get used to it. It's really nice to start out with a color chart that uses the same amount of colors that divides it equally. That's just more pleasant to knit. But then that 3 and 1, it gets you to be more comfortable with leaving your floats a little longer, because that's where your main challenge is going to be, keeping your tension relaxed while also leaving your floats longer. And in this video, I will also show you what to do, you know, when you want to catch floats. Sometimes you have 5 or 7 stitches of the same color, and then you definitely want to catch your floats. And the floats are the little pieces of yarn on the inside of your work. Also, if this is your first colorwork sock and you don't want it to be too tight, one tip is to flip it inside out so that on the outside of your knitting you see your floats. So when you're knitting, your floats go around the outside, which give you more stretch. But it might take a little bit of getting used to. Essentially, you're looking at the inside of your sock and knitting there. It's not that you suddenly need to purl. You're still knitting stockinette. You're just working on the inside. Let me know if that's if that's clear. But yeah, those are some really helpful tips if you're just starting out with colorwork. Other than that, if you've had some colorwork experience, feel free to choose some of the other motifs. There are some that are more challenging and some that are easier. Just have fun with it. Choose your own color combination or go with one that's in the booklet. Yeah, just have fun with it. And I hope these tips and tricks in this video will really help you out with that. If you've any more questions, leave a comment down below. Tag me on Instagram if you have any questions. There's a million ways to find me. So, and I'm really happy to help you out. So, happy knitting, and I hope you enjoy. In this clip, I want to show you what to do if you've got 5 or more stitches of the same color after each other. So I want to wrap my brown yarn, and I've got 5 stitches of yellow. So at the middle stitch, which is the 3rd stitch, I'm holding the brown yarn to the front while I knit that yellow stitch. After that, I bring my brown yarn to the back and knit the other 2 yellow stitches. And there's another way of doing this, so I want to show you that one as well. So again, you knit to the middle stitch, and instead of bringing the yarn forward, I'm bringing it to the side over the working needle and then knit the stitch. It works the same as bringing the yarn forward, so have a go and see what you like best. If you've got 6 stitches of the same color, I also wrap on the 3rd stitch, and if I've got 7 stitches, I wrap on the 4th stitch. So just try to stay relatively in the middle. And that's what I do for wrapping floats. All right, so I'm at the start of the heel now, and this part is the same whether you're going cuff down or toe up. So after you've added 15, 17, or 19 gusset stitches, you are ready to start the heel. So at this point, we have way more stitches on our 2nd needle than we do on our 1st needle. And you want to count your stitches between the gusset stitches, and don't forget this one is also a gusset stitch, right? For size 3, I have 32 stitches here, so I want to count until the middle, which is 16, there. And I want to put my stitch marker there. Oh, and by the way, I'm knitting cuff down, and I've already switched to my smaller needle because for the leg I'm using 2.5mm needles, and for the heel and foot I'm using 2.25. So let's see, these first two stitches are in pattern, and then we knit the gusset stitches as they appear. Okay, and then now we knit until 2 stitches past the marker, and we're going to do that with only yarn A, and that is only the yarn that you've used for the cuff or for the toe, and it's usually the pattern color. So I'm going to knit until the marker. There, I'm slipping my marker, and then two more, and then a knit 2 together and a knit 1. So we've knit 4 stitches past the marker. We turn our work. I have my yarn forward, slipping 1 stitch, pulling that tight. Oops. I do not want to be throwing stitches off my needle. Oh, and that was the knit 2 together. No worries, we can fix that. There. So I've slipped off that first one, and then I'm purling until the marker, which is purling 3, slipping the marker, purling 2. So again, we're going 2 past the marker, then I'm purling 2 stitches together and purling 1. So you always want to go work 2 stitches together and then work 1 more stitch. And now we turn our work. I am slipping my stitch as if to purl, so that means going in like this, but I have my yarn at the back. And then I am knitting, and I can remove the marker here now because we are knitting until 1 stitch before the gap. And I hear you asking, what gap? Well, that gap. It is always pretty visible, and we're going to knit these 2 stitches together and then knit 1. Don't forget that 1 stitch. And on the purl side, it's pretty much the same, except we're purling, of course. So we are purling along until 1 stitch before the marker, 1 stitch before the gap. There we go. Purl them together to close that gap. Then don't forget purl another one. And at this point, after completing a purl side, you can then count your stitches here and your stitches here to see if they are the same stitch count. That can be handy to just check if you're on the right track. So after completing a purl row, they should be the same. If it happens that you have 3 stitches here and 4 stitches here, that means you probably forgot to knit that extra stitch after working 2 stitches together. So just go slow. Don't, ideally, don't let yourself be distracted at this point. You know, take some time to do this. And knit 2 together. Don't forget that single stitch. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give you. And that's how you do the heel, and you will work your heel until you've worked across all of these stitches. So here I am knitting the heel of my sock. I'm on the knit side right now, and you can see that I've already knit up some of my gusset stitches. And when I get to the gap, you'll see that I have one stitch before the gap and one stitch after the gap, and I am knitting those two stitches together and then knitting one additional stitch. And knitting those two stitches together is a really effective way of closing the gap. So I'm knitting this sock at the moment, and I've just done the heel at the last row of the heel. So when I had knit up all of the stitches, I worked back and I decreased 2 stitches. I don't think you can really see it. I decreased one about here and one about here. Then I picked up 1 stitch at the gap here with my yarn A. I joined yarn B again. I worked across needle 1 for the colorwork section. And now I'm at the other heel gap. So I'm just showing you how I do this. So I want to pick up a stitch here, but I don't want to count this stitch into my chart. So I'm going to take a look at my chart. What I need to do next is I need to knit these 3 stitches of yarn A. I need to knit those here, but I want to pick up a stitch now. So because I'm going to be working 3 stitches of yarn A, I'm going to pick up that 1 extra stitch in yarn A as well. Just because if I would have this chunk of 3 dark green stitches and have 1 light stitch in there, it would look kind of weird. It would disrupt the pattern. So I've got my 2 yarns. I've just turned to needle 2, and to pick up a stitch I'm going in. So you can see that I have this first stitch on the needle. The stitch below that is kind of very long. It's very loose, so I don't want to pick up that stitch. What I do want to do is go behind. I want to see the stitch below that, and I'm going to pick up the horizontal bar. And with color work, there's always 2 strands behind your work, so you might pick up both strands here. I'm just going to pick up the dark green strand, and I'm knitting that with my dark green. So I do not want to count that into my chart because I'm going to decrease this stitch on the next round. So I'm just going to look back at my chart, see where I am. I need to knit 3 stitches of dark green. I've done 1 of those on needle 1, so I need to knit 2 more. So I'm not going to count this extra picked up stitch. I'm going to pretend that it's not there, and I need to knit 2 dark green stitches. And now, well, I don't have the chart with me, but I need to knit 2, 1, 2, so 2, 1, 2, and then 3 stitches of dark green again. And say that you haven't decreased the 2 stitches of the heel yet. I've done that here. You can kind of see it a bit more clear now. There's a knit 2 together over here. But say you hadn't done that yet, we can do that right here, because after finishing the heel you will have 2 stitches too many. So if you have 36 stitches on your needle, you would have 38. So we need to decrease 2. So I am going to knit 3 dark green stitches, but in the middle one I can knit 2 together with that dark green And that would be my 3 stitches. And I've used one of those to decrease. Now, I don't need to do that, so I'm actually gonna unknit that. But that is how you can decrease stitches while remaining your pattern. And I'm just going to knit until the end of this round because we have the other stitch that I picked up there. And I'm going to show you how I deal with that. And don't forget, I'm doing the toe up version, and after the heel you can change your needle size to one bigger so that your sock is a little bit comfier, a little bit roomier around your leg. So I have the picked up stitch right at the end there. We picked that up in the last round, so I can decrease that in this round. I just need to do 2 more stitches of light green because that's the end of my chart. I can knit one of those and then knit these 2 together. But what I usually like to do is put the decrease 1 stitch away from the edge. So I'm decreasing these 2 and then knitting the last one. And then you can continue along this needle, and then you only have to decrease this extra stitch here. So I'm knitting a colorwork sock here, and for this one, here is where the start of the round is, and look at one of the flowers here, and then look at the flowers on the beginning of the round. They seem very distorted. So I was playing around with the beginning of the round placement a little bit, but what I've decided on now looks like this. And I'm quite happy with how this looks, and let me tell you what I'm doing. So I am in a round where I'm starting a flower, and that flower, it's across the beginning and end of the round. And what I have been doing is I've just been changing the beginning of the round to just 2 stitches before the end of the row so that I can get the entire flower in one go. It might not make sense yet. So I've just started, I've done these 2 stitches. The flower starts with 2 stitches here, and then there's 4 stitches on top of that, right? And at the end of this round, I should really end with 2 pink stitches. But doing that will make this part, it will just distort it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to knit up until 2 stitches before the end. So I should end with 3 pink stitches here. Instead, I'm just going to do 1 pink stitch, and then I'm going to start row 2 here. So I'm going to start that layer of 4 stitches so that this flower will not be distorted. And it's a bit difficult to tell, but it really makes such a difference. And I'm able to do this because between the flowers there are 3 or 4 stitches of just background color, and there is the odd, single stitch here and there, but having those in a different spot, you don't see it, right? So this stitch is in a different spot than it usually is, but that's not something you notice. You can do this on a colorwork chart where there's also a motif and then some empty space around it. And if there's a motif on the, on the start of the round, you can play around with it and have the start of the round be earlier or later. So that's one thing I'm doing to customize this sock. And do I wish I had done that from the beginning? Yes, but this means that I can show you the difference, so I'm not too mad about it. So I hope this helps. Let me know if it does. It might not apply so easily to other sock designs. Hi everyone, I'm here with another sock tip. So on this sock, I am at the point where I need to start the toe. But if I do one more round, I've completed the, the motif, and it's sort of at a nice clean line. So there's one more round of color work and then one just solid pink round. And I think I'm gonna do that and then make the toe shorter. And by that, I mean that usually I knit around in the toe color before doing a decrease. I think I'm just gonna go straight in and do a decrease round. Or if you find that too noticeable, you can, at the end, you can omit a couple of plain rounds. So this toe alternates between decrease rounds and plain rounds, and I think I'm just gonna omit a couple of plain rounds just so I can finish the color work here. You don't have to do what the pattern says. You can customize it, you can make it your own, you can make it just how you want it. And if, just to add, if I needed to do like 5 more rounds, you can also decrease while knitting color work. Just putting that out there. It's something you can do if finishing the motif gives you so much joy. All right, see you next time. Bye-bye. With toe-up socks, one difficulty that you may have is that the leg may not be stretchy enough to fit around your leg. With cuffed down socks, this is usually less of a problem because of the wedge we will have on the leg's side, which create more width. So what I have done in some of my toe-up socks is I've increased some stitches here and there. So here in the flower motif, we usually have one stitch column dividing the flower motifs, and here I've just increased, so there's 2 stitches in between, and I've mirrored that on the other side. And just 2 stitches or 4 stitches make so much difference. And I've done this as well for this sock. It's a little bit more tricky because it's not a straight line. But here and there I did increase some stitches. See how, again, there's usually one row or one column of stitches in between the motifs. And here you can see I've added some more room in there. Here you can see there's 3 stitches. And that's 1 extra stitch on this side and 1 extra stitch on this side. And you can have a little play with that. I did that in the tree motifs as well. And I can't tell exactly where. I know that here I see some extra room, but I can't really tell. Maybe I started around here. Yeah, it's often not as noticeable as you might think. So I'm doing this again for these socks that I'm knitting with this lovely motif, and I always increase stitches on the back of the sock just so that it's less noticeable. And I want to increase 1 on this side and 1 on this side. And for the pattern, I need to knit this column, and I'm always going to add the extra color in the background. So the brown here is my pattern color, and my variegated yarn is the background color. So I'm going to knit this one, and the next one is going to be a brown color because I'm going to knit this motif. So what I'm doing here is I'm picking up a loop of the background color and doing a make one increase, and then I'll continue with the motif there. So now I've added that stitch in there, and this extra stitch, because this pattern is kind of meandering, it has it's not a straight line where this stitch will be, but it will remain within these two motifs, like in this squiggly line. And then I'm going to mirror this and add a second stitch at the other end. And just adding 2 stitches makes such a huge difference. And mind you, I've already switched to the larger needle size just after the heel, which already gives some more stretch in the leg of the sock. But just adding 2 stitches, it already makes a difference. And you can, knit 5 more centimeters and increase 2 more stitches. Choose two more columns to add a stitch onto. And increasing in increments of 2 stitches makes that it's still possible to follow the ribbing pattern that we chose. The ribbing is a 1x1 rib, which works with a 2-stitch multiple. So I think I'm going to add a stitch in that section. So I'm knitting this one, I'm knitting the pink stitch, and then I'm making an M1 increase before I complete this motif. And now I've increased 2 stitches in there, and they will just be added onto this squiggly line the same way where I've increased a stitch here, and then I've incorporated that stitch in the empty space between the trees. It's quite an advanced technique, but once you're a bit comfortable with cull work, I'm convinced you can do this. So that's one way you can make your socks more stretchy for the leg.